Happy National Public Lands Day, everybody, but what do our public lands and conservation have to do with zero waste? And the answer is everything. It has everything to do with zero waste living, particularly just eco-friendly living and climate change. Hello everybody, it's Emma and welcome back to my channel where we talk about all sorts of things zero waste, focusing on free, easy, and fun ways to live low waste. And I love combining these topics, eco-friendly living and getting outside, because those are the two things I love most in life. But first, we do have to acknowledge the dark side behind our public lands. Yes, it's amazing that places like Yosemite and the Grand Canyon, among hundreds of other sites, are set aside and protected. But that came at a cost. These public lands were stolen from indigenous peoples. They were kicked off their ancestral lands, often the most sacred parts of their lands, and were unable to practice cultural aspects like hunting, fishing, foraging, and more on these lands. But the story is changing. Many of our public lands are now allowing indigenous peoples back on these lands to practice their cultural practices. They are also working with tribes to become co-managed parks. Again, the story is changing, but there's still a lot of progress to be made. So keep that in mind the next time you're visiting a national park, a state park, any public land that was somebody's home before it was stolen, and the least we can do is acknowledge that land. So, what is National Public Lands Day? Public land, according to Wikipedia, is a portion of land that is held by central or local governments. This is called public land, state land, or crown land, depending on which country you're in. So in summary, it is state-owned or federally owned land that anybody can use, and there are many agencies that run these lands, from the National Park Service, the Bureau of Land Management, the Forest Service, the Army Corps of Engineers, state parks, Fish and Wildlife, Department of Natural Resources. Hey, I think I got them all. And public lands look like these iconic places like Yellowstone, Grand Teton, Glacier National Park, but also smaller and maybe lesser known public lands such as Hocking Hills State Park in Ohio, or Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument in Utah. And there is public land everywhere. So according to the Bureau of Land Management, BLM from here on out, National Public Lands Day is the nation's largest single-day volunteer event for public lands. It's held on the fourth Saturday in September every single year. Since 1994, National Public Lands Day has brought together hundreds of thousands of volunteers to help restore America's public lands. So it did start as a day of volunteering, and it remains as such to this day. It has since also expanded to just be a day that people can access their public lands for free. Many of our public lands do have a charge to access, and we'll get to that in a moment. And much of our public lands are still free, but on this day, every single public lands space in the United States is free for entry. Or if you want to get involved, you can volunteer as well. But what do our public lands even protect? I'll go show you. Public lands are set aside to protect natural places like this. I've been living in Voyageurs National Park this entire summer, and it has been so fun. Very mosquito-y. And if public lands like this aren't set aside, they will be subject to mining, oil extraction, deforestation, building extensive resorts, and so much more destruction. The best example here is Niagara Falls. If you have never been, it is a tourist trap for one of the 7 natural wonders of the world. There are resorts and casinos and restaurants and gaming centers, and it is just so built up. It's not focused on the natural beauty anymore. It's focused on that touristy stuff. And honestly, the same thing would happen with places like Yosemite and the Grand Canyon if they were not properly protected. So the goal of public lands is to avoid that. But public lands are also set aside for other resource use. The National Park Service is focused on preservation or limiting human development as much as possible. This means no foraging, usually no logging, building as few buildings as possible, and so forth. But other land agencies like the BLM and the Forest Service are conservation agencies. This means that they extract resources but at a responsible rate. They are still involved in mining, fracking, logging, and more, but they don't do it in a totally destructive way. Do I love it? No. But do I understand it? Yes, because we need oil, we need trees, we need stuff to survive. So I see the importance of these resources. While the BLM and Forest Service extract resources, they also have a goal for recreation. You can still hike, camp, and recreate in many other ways on these lands as a secondary use. In fact, the BLM and Forest Service are often free not only to access the land, but also to camp, which is pretty rare to come across on public lands. Long story short, our public lands protect natural beauty, but they also protect resources that we use and need every single day. And they do their best to harvest responsibly. Let's head back inside to talk about why public lands cost money. Not all parks cost money, and many states, many national parks even, are free. Voyageurs National Park, for example, is a free national park. And other states like Ohio, none of Ohio's state parks cost money to enter. But many of them are paid entry, federal or state owned. Why? There are several reasons, but there are two big ones. One being that public lands are not really known for their funding. If you have talked to a park ranger or anybody who works for public lands, you will know that park rangers don't get paid a lot, and a lot of the facilities need maintained, a lot of the trails need maintained, and they just can't get that done because of lack of funding. So this is a way to keep parks open and keep staff employed, is by having a small fee. Some parks are more expensive. I think national parks are like $20 to $40 to enter. State parks are usually around $10, depending on the state, but many of them offer an annual pass for significant significantly less cost. So especially if you're visiting a state or national park several times in a year, you will get your money's worth by buying the annual pass. And there are many ways also to get free passes. Seniors, veterans, Gold Star families, volunteers often get free passes. I think there are student discounts, there are discounts for children, so always check for discounts if you're looking to get public lands at a cheaper cost. Now another one, and this has really been a big change post-COVID and post people getting involved in the outdoors, which is great. The parks are becoming overcrowded, so implementing these fees and reservation systems are helping preserve the resource even further. Yes, it would be great to have millions of people visit every single one of our parks every single year, but then that means trail erosion, destruction of land for more parking and more restrooms, more lodging. It can lead to traffic, incidents with wildlife, hitting wildlife on the roads, more litter, and so much more. Overcrowding definitely is an issue in our national parks, and it's a fine line, of course, because even the National Park Service, they want everybody to get outside, they want it to remain accessible, but we can't put the land at a risk, of course. There are many other small reasons why parks will charge a fee for entry, but those are the two biggest ones. One more way that you can access your public lands, probably for free, is checking your local library. Many libraries offer state and national parks passes for you to borrow for the week, the weekend. I think it's probably however long you check out a book, but if you want to go to your state park for free, go get a free parks pass from your library, go check out your park for free, and then return it for someone else to use. Now, we've talked about setting aside land for conservation and preservation, but another reason that I want to talk about this topic is because our public lands are constantly under threat. First, being politics. During the Trump administration, they signed into law that many public lands would be shrunk, particularly Bears Ears and Grand Staircase Escalante National Monuments in Utah. And technically they did succeed, but the Biden administration very quickly overturned this and gave that land back its full designation at its full size. And as I said, the government has full control to extract whatever resources they want, control the size of these parks. But I think the government also has that responsibility to do so responsibly. And if the government were to just shut all public lands down from camping, hiking, outdoor rec, and turn it into oil fields and logging, that's not great for the environment or the people, anybody's physical or mental health. So yeah, depending on who's in office, our public lands are pretty consistently under threat politically. And of course, we have climate change. Now, every single park is at threat due to climate change, but there are particularly a few parks and species within these parks that are at very high risk during climate change. One plant, actually several different plant species, a lot of them, they're all trees. The Joshua tree, the sequoia, those are the two big ones. They both are endemic, meaning they grow in this specific region only, so there's nowhere for them to go, even if they could move fast. Like, you know, an animal can migrate very quickly. Trees cannot. Trees, it takes a lot of time for their seeds to disperse farther and farther north or higher up elevations. But again, these are trees. These are slow growing trees, especially sequoias. They grow for thousands of years, and their grow range is not that big. So they are at very high risk for climate change. These two very special species, and also several different animals, but one that comes to mind for me is the pika. They are a high alpine rodent, I believe, and they require extreme cold, which is becoming harder and harder to come across. Many of them live in places like Grand Teton, the Sierra Nevada mountain range. They're already living at the highest elevations. They can't go any higher. So as the planet warms, these species are becoming at risk, and therefore the entire ecosystem of these parks are becoming at risk as well. As I hinted at before, parks are also at risk due to overuse. Do I want them to shut down Yosemite because there's too many people going? No. What I think needs to happen is better education for the public. Because I think a lot of people are just now experiencing the outdoors for the first time. They don't know how to do so responsibly. And that means not littering, not feeding wildlife, staying on the trail, because if you go off trail, you're going to be causing erosion, parking in designated parking spots, packing in what you pack out, essentially just following the rules of leave no trace. And you can learn more about leave no trace in this video. Whether you're the only one on that land or you're amongst thousands of others at the Grand Canyon, always recreate responsibly. Because yes, overuse is an issue on its own. Like, even if everybody hiked a trail perfectly, but millions of people hike it, that trail is still going to erode over time. That's an issue, sure, but overuse becomes a real issue when nobody is recreating responsibly, or even if just a handful of people are being irresponsible about what they're doing outdoors. They really can ruin it for everybody. Another way that our parks are under threat is invasive species, and that is something I have learned a lot about at Voyageurs National Park this summer. And this, again, could be tied into overuse and lack of education, as you'll see in a moment. Invasive species are no joke. I don't think people take it as seriously as they should, and if you want me to make a full video on invasive species, let me know and I will. After living and working in Voyageurs this summer, I got very involved with the invasive species team. So Dan's a ranger here, and I wanted to be a volunteer just to build my own resume, build some skills, learn about the park, and so forth. So without going too far into it, invasive species outcompete their native species, leaving them defenseless and foodless. Invasive species truly disrupt the entire ecosystem, affecting every single species in the park. And once they're there, they're extremely hard to get rid of. The big one here, honestly, the big one in the entire United States is zebra mussels. They came from Europe across barges changes in the early 1900s have disrupted everything. For example, there's zebra mussels on the Hoover Dam. They have to have divers every single day go and clean the dam or else it will get clogged. The entire ecosystem of Lake Michigan and Lake Erie are totally out of whack due to zebra mussels. Fish have died, birds have died, humans can't catch fish, humans can't enjoy their recreation, and we have zebra mussels here in the park. Baby ones, so it's not a huge deal yet, but again, once they're there, they're extremely hard to get rid of if you don't want to affect the entire ecosystem. So what we're doing here is we are decontaminating vessels going from the infected lake to the not infected lake, and this just requires hot water. So it's a very, very eco-friendly process to complete, but it is very time consuming, very tedious, and the public doesn't love it. But again, taking 10 minutes out of your day to decontaminate your boat could mean better, cleaner waters for you and the ecosystem for the entire future. So please take invasive species seriously. It's part of Leave No Trace. It's part of education for recreationists. So those are just a few reasons why our parks are under threat. I'm sure you've gotten to this point by now, but public lands are essential for fighting climate change and a clean future. Public lands are protected to safeguard sensitive species, conserve resources, ensure responsible extraction of resources, and above all, give us a place to recreate. Yes, it's important that our public lands are preserved to protect these ecosystems, but it is also important to give us the opportunity to enjoy and connect with these wild places. It's really hard to experience remoteness in this modern age. I mean, even when I go out in the backcountry, I still have my phone with me. Granted, I usually don't have cell service, but I'm always connected to the digital world in some way. And I don't know about you, but for me personally, when I get outside, I feel so much more inclined to protect these resources that I'm enjoying. And every place that I go, I learn about a new issue. For example, I learned about the pika in Grand Teton. I learned about the Joshua trees in Joshua Tree. I learned about invasive zebra mussels here at Voyagers. So everywhere I go and I learn something, I'm more equipped to fight climate change, preserve our resources, and just be a better environmentalist. Getting out into our parks reminds me that it's not just my future, but all of us connected humans and the plants and the animals that need protected as well. Hopefully now you're feeling a little bit inspired. What can you do to protect our natural lands? Volunteer! Volunteering is a great way to get involved. You get to see your local public lands for free, make friends, learn new skills, build your resume, go somewhere unique, and give back to your favorite park. Now, how do you volunteer? National Public Lands Day is a great place to start. So many public lands are doing events for this holiday. You could simply just search volunteer opportunities plus your city plus your state if you're willing to drive a little bit and see what's available. It also depends on your skill set. Do you want to build trails? Do you want to pick up litter? Do you just want to talk to people and educate people? Many volunteer opportunities also come with perks such as shirts, other sort of merch, parks passes, free housing if you're like a summer term volunteer like I am at Voyagers. Something else you can do is to work for the parks. You could become a park ranger, a park guide, a regular volunteer, a resource specialist, or anything in between. Now you get to protect your public lands and get paid to do so. Now I have a full video coming on what it's actually like to work in the National Park Service from a ranger and a volunteer point of view, but in short, you're not always going to be 100% protecting resources. A lot of the time you will be just sitting at the visitor center educating visitors. Now that can be helping to protect the natural environment. So you might not be like directly picking up litter, directly preventing invasive species, but you will always have an influence on the people, whether you're volunteering or working in that park. Maybe you don't want to switch your job and maybe you don't have the time to donate. Instead, donate your money. Our park here averages only like $5 to $20 donations per person, and not even every single person donates, and that adds up to hundreds and thousands of dollars every single year. You don't need to donate your life savings. You can donate your pocket change. It makes a difference. And I get people asking me all the time, like, which park should I donate to? Donate to your local park. Pick your favorite park that you'd like to go to and give your money to them. Or maybe you take a once-a-year trip to Grand Teton and you really love that park even though you don't live there. Pick that park to donate to. Pick a cause that means a lot to you and donate there. And the last thing that you can do to protect our parks is to use your parks. Truly, it's as simple as using that public land that is set aside, showing the government that we want that public land to keep being preserved and protected. Not only use them, but use them responsibly. Don't go out there and cause a mess. Go out there and recreate responsibly. If you want to get out and recreate, how do you do that? There are two main ways that I recommend this is, one, just like Google what parks are near you. You can specifically do this with the National Park Service app. It is a free app. You can get on your phone and find the over 430 different national park lands across the United States. And you might be wondering, 430? I thought there were only 63. There are only 63 big P parks, but the National Park Service also has National Historic Sites, National Battlefields, National Monuments, National Lakeshore, National Seashore, and so many more. Find the closest one to you and go check it out. Maybe you're not interested in the National Park System, or maybe you want to go outside that into the Bureau of Land Management or the Forest Service or the state parks. You can also check out the Find Your Park initiative. This initiative is encouraging people to go check out their local parks. Like, yeah, it's really cool that, I want to travel thousands of miles away to go to Big Bend National Park or Great Basin National Park, but what about the state park that's only an hour from me? I should go check them out too. That's what this initiative is trying to do, is to get you out into your local parks. That being said, you don't need an elaborate road trip or flight to go be outdoorsy and get outside. You can just simply drive to your local park, even if it's just a city park, a state park, whatever is closest to you. Getting outside, you're outdoorsy. Hiking, One time, you're a hiker. You don't have to buy a bunch of gear. You don't have to do a whole bunch of planning. You can just simply go be outside. Now, if you are interested in gear, you can check out some of my favorite gear for being zero waste outdoors in this video. A lot of them are revolved around waste reduction, such as bringing my reusable water bottle. I hope that you learn to love the outdoors as much as I do, and I hope that you want to protect them as well. Not just for you, but for your current family, your future families, for future generations to come, and the plants and the animals, the entire ecosystem. Happy National Public Lands Day, or just about that time of year. I hope you get outside, have fun, learn something new, and maybe find your new favorite park. I really appreciate when you guys watch these videos because they don't perform all that well. It's not like my main topic that I talk about on my social platforms, but I love getting outside myself. I love talking about the outdoors. So thank you for watching this. If you have any questions about our public lands, leave them down below. And again, be sure to check out my video, what it's actually like to live and work in a national park, coming out in about a week or so if you're watching this the day it posts. I will see you then, but until then, remember that your small actions make a big difference in the long run. Bye guys. But first, we do have to acknowledge the dark side of public lands. Oh my gosh. According to the Bureau of Land Management, National Public Lands Day. But what do our national parks lands? No, it's just public lands.